Welcome back, guys. Chris here, and it is the 30th of June, so I'm bringing you this month's edition of NetSuite News. And I want to start off with NetSuite and AI. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about AI features that are being added into NetSuite. I've talked about that many other times in previous videos, and I will continue to talk about that as new features are rolled out. But in this video, I just want to talk briefly about how the AI industry seems to be leaning on NetSuite as a product. What sparked this off was CNBC released their 50 top disruptors of the year list. If you've never heard of that before, it's basically a listing of 50 that come out with it every year. And it's kind of like the pioneers or the movers and shakers in not every industry, but in a number of different industries. And more recently, it's become just basically a list of AI companies because all of them in some way are incorporating, if not entirely leaning on AI. And what was interesting about that, so they came out with that list a few weeks ago, and then a week after that, Evan Goldberg, who's the founder of NetSuite, re-released that article commenting on the fact that 36 out of the 50 names on the list were companies that utilize NetSuite as their ERP software. So to have a list of like that, where this obviously CNBC's opinion, so it's not written in stone, but to have a list of kind of the top 50 movers and shakers AI-based companies and then have 75% of them using NetSuite is really interesting. And really what I thought that kind of pointed to is the fact that NetSuite really is perfectly positioned for that kind of company. If you think about it, when you have these AI companies, especially ones that have started recently with the whole AI boom, these are companies that are newer, so they tend to be small starting off, but also they have oftentimes a huge capital injection and they're planning to expand very, very rapidly. So those aspects all combined is something that's really fitted towards NetSuite, where it's something that a small company can easily get set up and utilize, but can rapidly expand to companies that are very, very large. If you look at some of the names on that list, we're talking OpenAI, Anthropic, Canva, Stripe. These are really well-known companies. And while they might be big now, many of them started off not so big. It's not like, let's say, a consumer product goods industry where you tend to have thousands and thousands and thousands of employees. Even a big tech company that's doing software as a service might only have a few thousand employees, and that's something that NetSuite can do really well. Also, if you look at the aspect that where NetSuite tends to be weak, especially as it starts to scale up, is in things like manufacturing, the construction industry, consumer product goods, any one of these areas. That's something that a lot of these AI companies, they're just in a different field. So it's not exploiting some of the weaknesses that NetSuite has. And for that reason, it really does seem like a lot of those tech startups are leaning heavily into NetSuite as their preferred product moving forward. And I suspect that we're going to see a similar thing as AI continues to build up momentum moving into the future. So that was the first thing. Again, that might not be helpful information for you, but I did feel like it was newsworthy in relation to NetSuite. The second thing I want to talk about was NetSuite feature highlights. And in this case, I actually have two instead of my usual one. These are two videos I've come out with recently. First one was on CPQ, which stands for Configure Price Quote, if you've never heard of that. This is a relatively new product for NetSuite, although CPQ products have been around for a long time. NetSuite is just in the last year and a half has released their own CPQ product. They acquired another company for it. And if CPQ is something that you're looking at, especially if you're already on NetSuite, maybe you're using some other system, or you could use a CPQ setup, but you're currently using no setup at all. You just have salespeople sending quotes out. I highly recommend you check it out. It is a pain to implement. It definitely is a bit of a process, but once it's set up, it is a very robust system. I've seen a lot of success from several clients who have already used NetSuite and managed to bring on that CPQ module to great success. So again, if you're at all interested in that, by all means, check out my YouTube video on that. I go through some of the pitfalls you can run into on the implementation process and how best to mitigate that risk. And then the second highlight I wanted to talk about was the deductions and chargeback management tool. This is something that's actually been around for years, but most companies are completely unaware that it exists. And I find that most consultants don't even know it's there. It is a free suite app, so you can download it at any point. It's completely free. And it's one of those things where most companies, if they need a tool like this, they're probably already using it. They just do it manually, or they do it through journal entries, etc. So what is the product? product. It is basically 3 products in one, or at least in one app. And one is in relation to deduction. So this allows you to apply deductions to payments that are coming in from clients. Second is chargebacks, meaning there's still an outstanding amount that is owed by a client or a customer, and you can close out the original invoice and then send them a new invoice just for the remaining amount owed. And then the third item is a small balance write-off. So if you have 50 cents that was unpaid on a transaction, or if it's a very large transaction and there's $64 left around, you don't want to spend the time chasing that up. It's not worth it to your company. So you can write that off. Again, most people would handle that through standard journal entries, but this is an automated tool that's totally free that just makes the entire process more efficient. So if you're interested in something like that, my YouTube that I just released last week not only covers what the tool is, but also the full configuration, how to walk through that, and also some things to think about if you're going to utilize that tool. So it's a pretty comprehensive video. I highly recommend you check that out. The last thing I want to talk about in this video, something I've talked to death over the last few videos, so I'm not going to overdo it, but I do want to point out, I've commented on these Reed Consulting virtual webinars where you can attend live and they walk you through things like workflows, customizations, imports. These are very helpful webinars, especially when compared to some of the ones that NetSuite, for example, does a lot of webinars and sessions that you can attend. They're just not that helpful. These are webinars I found are incredibly helpful. They're very practical and they take just an easygoing approach to it. So I generally find, at least for myself, that you can get some cool tips and tricks out of them, especially if you're a relatively newer user, although not brand new. They're generally for people that are somewhere in the mid-range of skill level. And the reason I want to bring it up in this video is because they've generally been on Australian time. So unless you want to watch them at 10 o'clock, they're always live. So you can't watch a recorded version. And some people don't want to attend something at 10 p.m. at night. But they've recently come out with slots that they do on US times. So now you can take advantage of that. I will have a link down below. You can get on their mailing list. And basically every week they'll have one of these webinars. You can sign up, they'll send you a link, and you can attend them. So I felt it was important to mention that they're now actually accessible for all the American and Canadian viewers. And that's everything I've got for the month of June. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, I release a new video every single week. So if you want to support the channel and gain access to the materials, please hit that subscribe button. And with all of that in mind, I hope to see you in the next video.